news across San Diego. This is 10 News at 5.
Human rights advocates called it a brutal beating. San Diego police are investigating Rojas's death.
In early June 2010, residents of San Diego awoke to reports of an incident at the border with Mexico. According to San Diego police, an illegal immigrant caught sneaking into the country became violent when border agents removed his handcuffs. But it's what happened next that was reason for a police press release. Due to the combative behavior of the immigrant, read the statement, U.S. border agents used a taser to subdue him, and the subject stopped breathing. The subject, 42-year-old Anastasio Hernandez Rojas, lived long enough for his family to see he'd been beaten and bruised. By the time he died, his family believed he had been killed by U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents in an excessive use of force.
They didn't stop to think about the fact that he had a family, that he was leaving 5 kids and a wife.
The San Diego medical examiner ruled the death a homicide, listing the cause of death as a heart attack due to the altercation with law enforcement. But the coroner also found methamphetamines in his blood, which raised the question, had methamphetamines somehow contributed to the violence? Whatever happened, the story lasted just a few days and mostly receded from public view. Until now. What U.S. border agents did not realize is that eyewitness videos of the incident caught the sounds of Hernandez Rojas screaming and pleading for his life. And now, a never-before-seen eyewitness video of the incident raises new, disturbing questions. The dark video reveals more than a dozen U.S. border agents standing over Hernandez Rojas. It shows the firing of the taser. Was Hernandez Rojas, as the police press release suggested, combative when he was killed? Or was he on the ground, handcuffed? The death of Hernandez Rojas was just one in a 2-year string of deaths at the hands of U.S. border agents. 8 killings from San Diego to Texas that infuriated Mexican authorities, raised questions about the hiring and policing of America's largest police force, and exposed a pattern of inaction by federal prosecutors and justice denied. Our story begins in Los Angeles, California. John Carlos Frey can be called, among other things, an activist. Once a Hollywood actor who appeared in sitcoms and soap operas, this U.S. citizen, who was born in Mexico, became increasingly concerned by the plight of Mexican migrant workers and began making documentaries. When he read the report about the death of Hernandez Rojas, he wanted to know more.
It was a couple of lines in a press release, and then everything became tight-lipped. No more information, no more press articles, and the story went in some sort of a file and was buried.
So Frey began digging. He learned Hernandez Rojas had been in San Diego for 27 years. He was a builder, paying U.S. income taxes until the construction market collapsed. In May 2010, he was arrested trying to shoplift steak and a bottle of tequila. It was Mother's Day. His family believes the stolen items were meant to be a gift.
And a background check was done on him, and it was found that he was in the country without documentations. He was in the country illegally.
Frey introduced us to Hernandez Rojas's family, who told us he had been deported to Mexico, but immediately telephoned Maria and their 5 children, promising to return as quickly as possible.
I told him not to come back at the moment. Because it was very difficult, I was afraid. He was worried because I was by myself and the children were so young then.
Nonetheless, a few days later, Hernandez Rojas was sneaking back into the United States when hidden U.S. ground sensors in this remote area detected his footsteps, and Border Patrol caught him. They took him to a detention facility near San Diego, where, according to a lawsuit filed by the Hernandez Rojas family, a border agent grabbed Anastasio, pushed him toward a nearby wall, and repeatedly kicked the inside of Anastasio's ankles. Gene Iredale is an attorney representing the family.
Anastasio had a broken ankle many years before, and he had metal screws still holding his ankle together. The agent took his shoe and kicked the inside of his ankle out. And as he did that, he struck those screws and caused intense pain.
At the detention facility, Hernandez Rojas, according to the suit, requested medical treatment for his ankle and wanted to file a complaint against the agent who kicked him. The situation escalates and takes a deadly turn. They take him here, to a holding area at the border where undocumented workers are deported back to Mexico. But instead of bringing Hernandez Rojas here with the other illegal immigrants, they bring him alone, just before dark, in a car with the same agent about whom Hernandez Rojas tried to file the complaint.
2 agents, Anastasio by himself.
Correct.
It was here that, according to the San Diego Police Department, agents removed the handcuffs and Hernandez Rojas became violent, and that due to his combative behavior, agents used a taser to subdue him. We wondered whether the methamphetamines found in his blood contributed to the altercation. 2 medical experts we spoke with cast doubt on that. One said the amount of meth was small. The other said there's no way to attribute any of his actions that night to the drug.
We have a man who was brought to the border to be deported and ended up dead. It seems like something is missing here.
Frey began hearing rumors of eyewitnesses. He found a priest in Tijuana, Mexico, who said he knew someone who saw it happen. Frey telephoned the man and recorded the conversation.
Le pegaron con macanas, muchas veces, muchas cantidades. Parecía que le habían tocado una tambora. Lo golpearon, lo patearon. Okay. Le aventaron con la pistola eléctrica tremenda que el señor ya no se movía ya.
¿Tú viste todo eso?
Yo estuve viendo de eso.
So last month, we traveled across the border to Mexico with Frey, to a Tijuana migrant shelter to meet the priest and the eyewitness. We found the shelter filled with poor migrant workers, many of whom had been recently deported from the United States. We found the priest, but the eyewitness had backed out, afraid of the camera. So we called the eyewitness on the phone.
¿Qué hizo el Anastasio para recibir esos golpes?
Él de hecho, no se miró que haya hecho nada, pero a lo que se vio, en ningún momento el señor hizo nada como para que le propinaran ese tipo de golpiza. Digo, no es para tanto.
The man on the phone had no proof, but Frey learned back in San Diego there was another witness who actually did have video of the incident. 26-year-old Humberto Navarrete, an American citizen who spent 4 years in the National Guard, was on his way to Tijuana the night of the incident.
What was the very first thing you heard?
I heard Anastasio screaming and asking for help.
Navarrete says he shot this dark video on his cell phone, standing maybe 20 feet from Hernandez Rojas and the officers. Although you can't really make out the figures on the ground behind the agent's SUV, you can hear Hernandez Rojas pleading. While the video is unclear, Navarrete says he could clearly see what was happening.
I noticed that Anastasio was face down. He was in handcuffs.
You say he was in handcuffs?
Yes, he was in handcuffs.
You're sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Handcuffs? The San Diego Police Department had said the subject became violent when the agents removed the handcuffs.
No doubt in your mind?
No doubt in my mind that he was in handcuffs.
So he's prone on the ground, handcuffed,
yes.
And they're still beating him?
Yes.
In the video, you can hear Navarrete appealing to an officer and the officer's response.
Hey, he's not resisting. Why are you guys using excessive force on him? I don't know what's going on over there, but... Huh? Obviously, he's doing something.
Navarrete says the official explanation, that Hernandez Rojas was combative when he was tasered, is false.
Hey, he's not resisting, guys. Why you guys keep pressing on him? He's not even resisting.
I can tell you that he was not resisting.
What was in the report is not what he witnessed. He witnessed a brutal beating. He witnessed Anastasio being punched and kicked and being held down.
Can you imagine law enforcement's argument? In other words, they might say, listen, we don't separate a person out from the pack just for fun. We only do that when we got a problem. We got a guy who was fighting back and had to be subdued.
It really comes down to credibility and who you believe. But if you listen to Anastasio on the tape, he's shouting for help. He's saying at the top of his lungs, "Help me."
South of the border in Mexico, Navarrete's video went viral. The Mexican networks picked it up, suggesting the incident was a case of brutality. Protesters demanded justice for Hernandez Rojas.
Nos hizo pensar a todos los mexicanos.
It made all us Mexicans think that there is no good neighbor policy at work, that there are no brotherhood policies between the U.S. and Mexico.
Gabriela Pereza, who leads Mexico's National Human Rights Commission in Tijuana, says Mexicans were outraged over the Hernandez Rojas case.
Coraje, impotencia,
anger, impotence, desperation, a wish for justice to be done.
Justice, or at least an open hearing in U.S. court, may be a long time coming. A need-to-know examination of immigrant killings in the past 10 years reveals a pattern of deaths followed by no public hearings, no criminal charges, and no trials. Unlike most American police forces, which must account publicly for nearly every bullet, the U.S. Border Patrol, as part of the Department of Homeland Security, faces virtually no public scrutiny. The government typically refuses to release any information about agents involved in migrant deaths. Nothing about their identities, training, qualifications, or records. In the fall of 2010, the ACLU filed Freedom of Information requests, asking U.S. Customs and Border Protection to explain its policy and procedure on its use of force, deadly force, and use of tasers. The agency sent back documents so redacted, the documents shed no light on the department's practices. And Pereza says Mexican authorities have documented at least 18 cases, excluding drug smuggling, of Mexicans dying at the hands of U.S. border agents.
Of the 18 cases that you're aware of, how many times have U.S. agents been charged or taken to court for that?
Yo no conozco.
I don't know any.
In fact, only once in 10 years has a U.S. border agent been criminally charged for killing a migrant, and that case was dismissed. In one civil case, the court ruled in favor of the agent. Most recently, the death of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas was among a string of 8 killings in less than 2 years. Just days after his death, a border agent in El Paso, Texas, shot and killed a 15-year-old Mexican boy who was standing in Mexico. The agent fired across the border, saying the boy was in a group of Mexicans throwing rocks. In Arizona, in March of 2011, Border Patrol shot a 19-year-old Mexican-American 3 times in the back as he climbed the fence back into Mexico. Agents said there were drugs in his truck, and again said someone was throwing rocks. 3 months later in San Diego, Border Patrol shot a Mexican in the head, killing him in this tree in Mexico near the border fence. Agents said he was throwing rocks. 8 cases in less than 2 years, followed by no public hearings, no criminal charges, and no trials, including the Hernandez Rojas case.
What are the odds that a federal prosecutor in the middle of an election year is going to decide to prosecute a case against a group of Border Patrol officers?
The chances under this assessment would be 0.
There are so many who say, listen, we wouldn't even have a problem if Mexicans would stay in Mexico. We're not asking you to come here. You're breaking the law. You're invading our country. Stay out. You come at your own risk. And now you get hurt crossing the border and you're going to blame us for it?
I agree. Entering the country illegally is a crime. It is a violation of immigration law. That is true. It does not warrant a lethal bullet between your eyes or in your back. So we're talking about lethal force being used with someone who didn't even brandish as much as a knife.
I'm certainly sympathetic to those individuals who lose their life as a result of some of these activities.
W. Ralph Basham was the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection from 2006 to 2009 and says border agents work in a very dangerous environment. About 1,000 agents are assaulted every year.
These agents have to be able to protect themselves when they feel like their life is being threatened, or the life of other officers. Hey, look, I went to too many funerals when I was a commissioner.
But a 2010 Associated Press investigation concluded that border agents are assaulted at a dramatically lower rate than police, and unlike police, typically assaulted with rocks, not knives and guns. In 2006, due to mounting pressure to secure the border, President George W. Bush approved doubling the size of the Border Patrol. Customs and Border Protection is now the largest law enforcement agency in the nation, employing almost 60,000 agents and employees. An expansion so rapid it concerned former Commissioner Basham.
Listen, anytime you have that kind of a massive hiring initiative, you run the risk of people that are getting into the positions that perhaps should not be there.
The push for more officers led to an extensive backlog of background checks, unsuitable hires, and criminal behavior, according to congressional testimony by customs officials. Since 2004, a reported 132 U.S. Customs employees have been indicted for corruption. Last year, 26 were arrested, but none for any of the immigrant killings, including Hernandez Rojas. 6 months following Hernandez Rojas's death, Ray learned of another video, an eyewitness who was reluctant to come forward.
I tried through various channels for a period of months to contact the individual, to try and convince them to bring this video forward.
Why hadn't they come forward with the video?
This person felt possibly afraid for their life and for their own safety.
After months of effort, the eyewitness agreed to meet Frey face to face.
He told me that in the year that I didn't come forward, other incidents happened with Border Patrol.
And what did you think of that?
The guilt was overwhelming.
Ashley Young, a 24-year-old project manager from Seattle, was crossing back into the United States after visiting Tijuana when she, too, heard Hernandez Rojas screaming for help.
I kind of quickly walked to the end of the catwalk, which is where I saw a whole kind of crowd of people gathering.
Young took out her camera and shot this first very dark video of what she says is Hernandez Rojas on the ground near the back bumper of the truck with 2 officers on top of it.
He was just screaming, "Help me, help me, help me," in Spanish. His hands were restrained behind his back.
You could tell that his arms were somehow tied together.
Right.
And Young says she only saw him resist once when officers tried to put him back into the car.
Did he lash out at the officers in any way?
He didn't. He just kind of forced his feet against the frame of the car so that he wouldn't go into the car.
Minutes later, more officers arrive.
Another officer arrived and pulled out a taser and said, "Stop resisting."
Was he resisting?
No. The first tase, it was a shock. And people were like, why would they do this? And after the first tase, when he got tased several more times, that's when people erupted.
That's when, standing on this overpass with other bystanders, she shoots this. You can see Hernandez Rojas on the ground, surrounded by more than a dozen officers. Need to Know has brightened the video to make it easier to see.
Oh my God.
One agent at the top of the screen pulls off Hernandez Rojas's pants and walks away with them. But it's not until a few seconds later, when things appear to calm down, when an officer turns on his light, that we see an agent's bare leg as he kneels on what appears to be Hernandez Rojas's neck.
The next thing that happened is he stopped moving and he was convulsing during the tase. And then after the tase stopped, he just kind of lied there. Hey, no!
Young didn't know it, but she was capturing the final 2 of 5 attempted tasings. Pay attention to the officer's extended arm. You can clearly see the sparking of his taser as he fires 2 wires carrying more than 1,000 volts of electricity into Hernandez Rojas.
Oh my God.
Watch it again. Taser records show this is likely a 12-second tase. And can you see the officer reach in right there? According to the lawsuit, the agent is attempting to hand-deliver a 5th and final tase, called a drive stun, applied directly to the skin, designed to punish and inflict pain.
I think I witnessed someone being murdered.
We took the video to Gene Iredale, the Hernandez Rojas attorney, who had never seen it before. He said the critical moment is this one.
When you're using force and you know you have to explain it or it has to appear some way to the people who are watching, you say, quit resisting.
And Iredale knew something none of us knew. He had read the San Diego police interviews with the border agents. Unlike the official press release, border agents admitted Hernandez Rojas was handcuffed at the time he was fatally injured, and then hogtied, his feet bound.
He was on the ground. He was handcuffed. He represented no danger. They tased him 5 times and then swarmed all over him. That's brutality. That's torture.
They made sure people moved along and stopped watching and stopped recording.
Keep on walking!
They stopped a couple that had been there about the same length of time that I was there. And the couple had recorded what happened on their cell phones, and the officers took their cell phones away and said, "What did you record? We're going to delete it." And I kept walking.
We asked the U.S. Border Patrol for an interview. We wanted to show them the video and ask them about what happened. They sent us a copy of their 2-year-old press release, declined our interview, and suggested we speak instead with the U.S. Department of Justice. So we tried. We thought the Department of Justice might want to see the video and explain how one person, John Carlos Frey, was able to find new evidence in this case while the department, with all of its resources, had not. And why, after 2 years of investigating, it has issued no findings and taken no public action. The government sent back a 1-sentence response. Given that the department has an open investigation, the department declines your interview request at this time.
When do we get to become outraged? When do we get to put pressure on the Border Patrol to change their practices?
I hope that Anastasia's family gets some kind of justice, or at least knows the complete story. I feel like they don't know what really happened.
If we really do believe in law and order, let's make our own officers accountable to that law and order. Let's have a little transparency. People have died. People have been killed. Let's have some law and order with the very agency that is tasked with protecting our borders.